You're listening to the Influential Conversations podcast with Industry Influencer of the Year, Kirk, Stafford, and guests. Proudly brought to you by Tappy, helping property managers deliver a world-class maintenance experience to their landlords and tenants and save 40% of their time processing maintenance requests. Box Brownie, the innovators in property photography. Have a look at their new product, Snap, Snap, Snap. This is the brand new phone app designed specifically for real estate agents, which allows you to shoot professional quality photographs straight from your phones. Inspection Express. They're the market leader in property inspection reporting and digital signature property documentation, giving you a seamless approach to the way that you manage properties, as well as Agent Dynamics, the market-leading team development ecosystem to help you nurture, grow, and retain your property teams since 2014. Now, here's your host, Kirk Stafford. Well, welcome to what is the final in Series 1 of the Influential Conversations podcast. And today, my guest is the amazing Julie Davis from Agent Dynamics and so many other things. Love your business. I lose track with you, Julie.
That's why I just rebranded under Julie Davis, right? That's why I just like Julie Davis and all these other things float off me, which is very cool.
You've been around and allied with the real estate industry for
over
more
3
years than I know. Yeah, that's 3 decades plus. You're a coach. You're a consultant. Okay, I've got a bit of a crush on you, so, professionally speaking. What I'm interested in is who you actually are. So, Julie, tell us your story. How did you come into this industry? How did you come into real estate and property?
Okay, interesting question. I guess I come into in the 90s through a failed business venture of a franchise that we had purchased and ended up going south and ended up in the court system. So I had someone, one of my neighbours actually in where I lived in Canberra owned an agency, and he called me one day and said, hey, have you ever thought about real estate? I hadn't really. I've always had a like because Pete was a builder and we built a couple of houses and all of that sort of thing. And I thought, maybe I'll just give it a bit of a crack. And so I made an agreement with myself, firstly, that if in 1 year I did not sell one house, I would quit. And I'm happy to say that at the end of year 1, I had sold 50 houses and continued to do so each and every year when I was a technician in the industry. And I think the reason I did that is because originally I'd come from a direct sales background.
Yep.
And I always had the attitude or the mentality of that I am a business within a business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an employee. I'm not, it's my business. I've always been reasonably entrepreneurial, but I was very much, because I'd come from direct sales, it was very much like had built some really strong and it come very naturally to me to build strong relationships. Mm-hmm. And I just continued to do that in real estate, and it was greatly successful. I actually changed my first agency within a couple of months. And the reason I did that was because they were not supportive in terms of giving me any training. They didn't think that was particularly necessary. And of course, it's really important that you have a high skill level in our industry. And I took myself off to, it was the REI in the ACT. And that day was actually very pivotal in my life for several reasons. The first reason, I innately knew if I stayed where I was in that environment, I would never realize any success. Now, on that day, I actually had a contrast of the two trainers that were in that room who owned a real estate agency. I was blown away, and I thought, wow, if I was in this environment with these tools, I could do really, really well.
Yep.
Well, it just so happens that that day is the day that I met my business partner of 15 years, and a 30-year relationship, professional relationship, happened on that day. And I ended up going and worked for that agency for a number of years until I semi-retired and come to the Gold Coast, bought management rights. But the foundation of what I learned was really pivotal to my success. The accountability, the support really set me up for success. So that was my entrance in to real estate. And the reason for saying that is sometimes you will go into something, but you might be in the wrong environment for you.
Yep.
And environment always wins. And so if you are somewhere that is not the right environment, that you don't have shared values and the level of support that you need to have for a success framework, you need to consider where do you need to be to get that framework.
Yep, that's right. And that's really interesting because the environment, and I think we now say culture within an organisation is just incredibly important. It's the most vital part of the organisation. Really, it underpins the performance, the success, the enjoyment of everybody within that office environment.
I agree, Kirk, and like with particularly when I'm talking about, obviously my journey has transposed a lot, but still within the industry. And now as a coach and consultant, when I'm talking to my clients about like what I believe are the critical elements when they're recruiting a team member is there's three key things that they need to focus on. And the first one being culture, vision and values. Now, I'm not talking about words on the wall. I'm talking about what is the essence, what's actually lived inside that organization, and to have a values match with that person to say, is this a person that I hand on heart believe will truly uphold our values and be the character of the person that I am proud to introduce as a representative of our company. That's the first thing. The second thing, and going back to our Asian dynamics work here with our profiling, is that person innately tuned for that role? Now, what I mean is there's two critical elements we need to look at, one being skill level and the other being your natural energy or flow, because I often ask the question in a team session is who has ever had a job that they could do technically, but at the end of the day, they felt no joy or fulfillment from that job and they weren't energized. And I promise you, everybody's hand goes up. And it's what I call full pockets, empty heart. Now, as a human being, like one of the, we talk about Maslow's hierarchical needs is that need in terms of contribution, but self-actualization of that we're actually making a difference and that we're fulfilled both personally and professionally.
Yep, that's right.
The key thing that I'll just finish up on is the skill level. Now, what I don't see happening in our industry is skills testing. Now, if you've passed box 1, box 2, we're then making an assumption of what is on the resume to be true and correct, which in most cases it's not. But we say we've ascertained this person is a great fit. Where do we need to support them in terms of their skill level, or where can they demonstrate the skill level that they're at to fulfill that role?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. And you're right. We do facts, and I've always, when I've brought people on in an organisation, I've always, I think, I've done some skills-based testing in terms of the questioning that I engage in the interview. But I mean, my focus has always been on recruit for attitude, because with the right attitude, skills can be taught. We recruit for attitude, recruit for fit. Don't recruit because they're a great technician, because they could be a great technician and every time they walk out of the office they're leaving a hand grenade behind. We've got to, and I think at the moment the industry's a little bit between a rock and a hard place, because we are in the middle of a crisis of staffing. We know that. So we really, in a lot of cases, try to grasp to fill holes very, very quickly. We're very reactive at the moment. And we've always been that way, but it's even more so at the moment. And if we can just take a step back and assess a little bit more clearly and look at the cultural fit, look at the attitudinal fit, look at how they interact with the people that are around them, and also their skill level. I mean, you can always teach better skills, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we don't do any formalised testing of it.
Correct. And like, I guess what I'm going to do here is do a bit of a blatant plug for the platform, the Love Your Business, which is being launched in July.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, if I look at all the work that I've done the last 15 years or so in terms of when we go in and we do team profiling, I see that as the border of the jigsaw puzzle. It's a really key part, but it's not the total answer. It's part of the solution in terms of communicating and having depth of understanding within the team. However, there's been a very, very big element missing in our industry, which is why I've worked with a number of professionals in HR, behavioural psychology, and legal to bring this platform to it's a specific real estate platform where we can actually measure. We have a dashboard where you can actually measure team engagement. You can do the surveys. We can do the one-on-ones. It's a whole infrastructure that also provides and houses. We've at the moment got thousands of documents that we're putting into the thing of your standards, your onboarding procedure and everything like that, and actually have everything in one place, as well as a whole, we've integrated with another learning and development platform as well, where there is delivery of training modules in many different aspects, whether that's from health and safety right through to sales. I think as a business owner in real estate, it's very, very hard because most have come through being a sales agent or a property manager who were possibly in a situation where they thought the environment that they were in a lot of cases was not conducive to their success. And so they decided to start their own agency or business with very little formalized training and support. We learn all of the legislation, but what are the practical skills? And we talk about the recruitment crisis within real estate. I think what's as equally as important is the retention crisis of how do we create an environment where people want to contribute and stay and are aligned with with the values of that organization and consistent leadership from that leader. And part of like what we're doing with the Love Your Business platform is to be able to provide that infrastructure for the business owner so they can retain, because we're looking at each staff member, it's like 30 to 50% of their annual income.
That's right. And if we can get that retention piece right, our recruitment requirements will actually drop away. We'll be recruiting for growth rather than recruiting for gap. Yeah. And that's the thing. And we've always recruited, I think, well, not always, that's being very general, but unless we're growing, all we're doing in most cases is we're just filling for, when someone's resigned, when someone's decided they don't want to work there anymore for whatever reason. So we've got to get away from that. We've got to be more structured with our plan. And that's one thing that we struggle with. We do try to look forward, I think, as an industry, but in a lot of cases we end up being derailed by the immediacy of the requirements that we have. And I don't think real estate's any different to that. I think most industries and most sectors are exactly the same. Yeah, they're looking at the future, but they're getting the present coming in from the side and taking control of the situation. So that's a difficult thing to overcome. Now, I think we all face these sorts of challenges, and sometimes we go through some pretty hard times. I would segue into something else that's a little bit different, and talk more about resilience and coping. We've all had times in our life where there have been particular challenges personally, and I know your situation, and I'm very respectful of that, but I don't want to sort of go touching into anything that's
absolutely. I'm very happy. Yeah.
When you face those sorts of personal challenges, where have you gone? What have you done to keep yourself afloat, to keep yourself buoyant? What have you done? Is it reading? Is it internal?
Yeah. I think it's a couple of things, right? And like for your viewers who don't know my story, but 7 years ago, well, 7.5 years ago, my husband, Peter, was at 65 diagnosed with motor neurone disease, which we thought was a pinched nerve in his back. He just picked up a kettle one day and his hand sort of went a bit floppy. And it was about a 6-month journey in terms of diagnosis because there's no definitive test for motor neurone. And within a couple of months of that, he was in a wheelchair. And for 7 years, he fought this hideous disease. And on average, is 27 months is the lifespan of most people. There's two forms of motor neurone disease. There's what they call the bulbar, which affects your speech, which you're familiar with. Neil Danaher, of course, in Melbourne, and you'll see they sound like they're drunk, right?
Yep.
They've had a stroke. Or there's ALS, which is the lateral sclerosis, which is what Pete had. And so basically the neurons in your brain stop sending messages to your muscles, and you have muscle weakness in your body to finally, in the last days, your muscles that allow you to breathe just collapsed.
Oh, okay,
So for the past 5 years, Peter's not been able. He was not able to feed himself to have any independence whatsoever because he couldn't use his arms, he couldn't use his legs. Cognitively, thank God, he was smart, right? And he still had his faculties. But it was a tough journey. And I guess for me, and coming back to your opening comments, like I've got so many things happening under my brand. Was within those 7 years, I was really in business survival. I had an incredible business partner that, I can remember times of us consulting with clients and I would fall asleep in the corner because I'd been up all night with Pete,
Yeah.
And so you talk about resilience, you talk about choice. When we talk about resilience, we talk about choice because you will always have a choice of how you choose to react and respond.
Yep.
Humour got me through. I mean, a lot of, my friends, my family, my colleagues, my clients, the blessings that, and I believe, like Peter had a death sentence, right? But he had a death sentence that come with many, many blessings. And he got 5 years longer. He saw both of his daughters get married. He saw Amy, when Peter passed in March, she was about 7 months pregnant. But Kaya was his constant companion. She was like 4 years old and she would feed Poppy and ride around with Poppy on his wheelchair. They had a very close relationship.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest joys for him was to see our eldest daughter, who had gone through 3 years of IVF, deliver two beautiful, beautiful little humans. And they were 7 weeks old when Pete passed. That him as a father and his life goals, they were fulfilled.
Good.
So having those strong values around family is really important. Reaching out for help, right? And so it doesn't matter what your situation, or whether it's something like a medical diagnosis like I had or we had, or whether it is something is that like you're just maybe struggling a little bit with your mental health. And I'm going to give a plug here for the Real Care app. Go to the Apple store and grab it. It's amazing. It's sponsored by, the RISE Initiative and Domain MRI. It's a great tool. And as part of an onboarding process, everybody should be using that Real Care app as your employee assistance program. There is a lot of help. Sometimes we don't ask for help.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we think we know all the answers. I think, and we don't. No one does. And I know at times that when I've struggled, I've actually done that. I've had times where I've gone, no, I'm good. I'm okay. I'm good. But there have been other times I've gone, you know what? No, I'm not. I actually need to. I need to call someone, whether it's a mate, whether it's a family member, whatever it is. So you're right.
So important, Kirk, because We are living in an industry that is the most at-risk industry of suicide. So 13 out of every 1,000 suicides in Australia come from the real estate industry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's very sobering. And this
Yeah.
is why when I go back in terms of when we have an employee, we have somebody in our team, we need to own their hearts as well as their hours. We need to know about their life goals. We need to know about their families. You know, I see so often that people are commoditized, and I understand that business owners get jaded. I understand that it's hard. But if you want to keep good people, you need to be invested in them as a person, make them feel valued within your organization, make them feel safe,
Yes.
right? There's just some really key things that you need to do that is going to have incredible results and impact on your business going forward.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And the organisations that do well are those that do show that care. They do have that respect for their team. They have that. It's a love for their team members.
Absolutely.
And you touched on it there. They make them feel safe. They know that their team know that the people above them, management team above them, have their back. And that's such a vital thing, to have that feeling of support within an organisation. Because that's really, when you think about it, and we started this conversation talking about culture. Culture comes from the top.
Absolutely it does.
It's displayed by everyone, but it comes from the top, and it comes from the way that people lead and the actions and the behaviours and the attributes that they display.
Correct. And I'll add to that the consistency that they have in displaying those attributes. See, there's a, we need to provide safety for those in our team, and we need to allow consistency. Mm-hmm. And as a leader, we often always see, not always, but often we'll see that the employee is at fault. But what is the framework that we actually set them up for success? What is the accountability? What are the tools that we give them? I'm just gonna add one more thing here on resilience, which is important. The reason I left real estate in 2001 and decided that, I was at burnout, and the thing that shocked me about myself was the realization of how one-dimensional I became. That my conversations were very narrow, and that really scared me. Yep. Because you become obsessive. So yep. I think in terms of it, I think it's critical to be looking at, when we talk about resilience, it needs to come from other areas of your life. My mental fitness is very much in tune to my physical fitness, and that's me taking time and taking time out, so that whatever remaining years I've got left, which I'm hoping and counting on and planning on there being many of them, is that I go into I turn 63 this year, but I'm going into those next 20 years with strength and resilience for my body, strength and resilience for my mindset,
mm-hmm.
and a heart for others, right? I just think it's so important to have, collaboration in your life. I think it's so, so important to have gratitude. I think that it's also really important to keep yourself in check, that you come from a place of humility and not ego.
Oh, yeah. Yep, for sure. Because that's really interesting, because you touch on very similar points to those which I have over time when I've talked to people about resilience, and I've done some platform speaking on it, and they're the keys: gratitude, empathy, humility, humour. Yeah, and that's really a big one. The most resilient people I know have got a very, very well developed, and in some cases quite warped, sense of humour. It's certainly something that you can look at the world through a different lens, that not everything is serious. Yeah. And there may be serious situations, but I mean, if you go back 3 years, you remember all the memes and all the jokes that were being told about the coronavirus. And that got a lot of people through because people were trying to find the light side of it, the funny side of it. So we can't walk around with these two big stones on our shoulders.
Yeah.
Think the world's as bad as it is.
And when so when Pete passed, I stopped watching the news because he would call me at every evening. Like, you can imagine, like, your world becomes very small, his world. And so his highlight was at 6 o'clock or 5:30, he would call me and he would summon me and say, Julie, the news is on. And then we would spend the rest of the evening watching every conceivable news show that was on, whether it's Sky News, Current Affair, ABC News, SBS, like whatever. He was just like, and that's what kept him alert, right? The current affairs and everything. But for me, I was like very newsed out. The other thing that was very pivotal for me was happiness is like a really important thing. And being in a place where you're happy and not doing things out of a sense of obligation. So I'm probably hijacking you a little bit here in terms of my time, because I just think like these points like have been very pivotal for me. Was when I was very, very clear in terms of where I wanted to go in the future when my next chapter started, right? Very, very clear. And my then business partner, Neil, my very dear friend, he had been diagnosed with PTSD and has gone through so much personally and still does. And after his dad passed away 2 weeks after Pete, and I had a conversation with him and I said, okay, we need to have a conversation of where do we go from here within the business, because I'm ready. I've got my jetpack on. I'm ready to go, right? But you need to check in and go and I said to him, whatever you choose to do, I will support you. But whatever you choose to do comes from a place where you are going to be happy. And he said to me 2 days later, he goes, I'd like to retire. Which he did. And so 1st of July last year, I morphed into my own brand and had several brands under that. Agent Dynamics, of course, Team Dynamics, now Love Your Business, plus my personal consultancy. And so he made a decision that was the right decision for him. We have an amazing relationship. Most partnerships go south at most points. We've got an incredible, like when he just sent me the most beautiful flowers, from like, he truly believes in me. And we still will have conversations weekly and catch up. But having that clarity, but also like knowing if there's somebody else involved in that, is like to have the conversation, what's going to make them happy, what do they want? And to alleviate any sense of obligation, because Neil, obviously he supported me incredibly over that period, but because he had struggled so much with his own health and mental health, it was through a sense of obligation that he supported me, which is commendable. However, sometimes we do that in detriment for ourselves. So I think communication is really critical. For me, I've got very high values as well around personal development and learning and always wanting to be better. And I think it just has made me much more multi-dimensional. And, of course, your faith is important as well. But it makes you multi-dimensional of how you show up in the world, and it makes you more expansive, but it also allows you to be more focused.
That's right. And that's interesting to see that, and this goes to what you said before about when you left the industry in 2001, you become very one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And we do tend to do that. We need to have other facets within ourselves that are not solely to do with our work, because that's where we can find the joy in our lives, the happiness in our lives. When we're so focused on work, well, if that's not going well, we've got too much tied to it. We're too aligned to it. But we've got other things, as you said, there's other brands, there's other businesses, there's other interests.
Yeah.
It's a vital thing.
Harvard did a big study, Marcus Buckingham, they did a big study a number of years ago talking about like team engagement and a healthy workplace.
Yep.
And a very big contributing factor to that was the interest that, whether it's some sort of side gig or whatever, the interest that people had outside of work made them, because they had lots of other things going on, actually made them more productive and more engaged in the workplace.
That's right. Yep, exactly. And that's what everyone should in some way have, whether other interests, whatever they are. I mean, I think mine are pretty well documented all over social media as to what mine tend to be with the skiing and the kayaking and a couple other things. But
I can't understand how you want to have a holiday and get cold, right? I'm an après skier, right, in front of the fire, blue mine, but I'm more of a like, let's lay on a tropical island type girl or go on a cruise.
Do you realise that I sweat more when I'm skiing than I do lying on a beach?
I'm sure that you do. And I've never ever developed a skill set. Even coming from Canberra, we would, but I've never really skied. I'm sure it's it would be a really great thing. But my kids said this year, let's go to Queenstown. And I went to Queenstown a couple of years ago in November, and it was 11 degrees. And I'm going like, this is not my idea of a holiday. But anyway, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, you're from Canberra. That would almost feel like it's the tropics, wasn't it? When you've been for a long time. Yeah.
I've done my time now. Gold Coast winters. I had 40 Canberra winters where you get chilled to the bone. I do miss autumn that we don't have on the Gold Coast. But we become a bit of a sook, when we're when I go to Melbourne or whatever. It's okay in short doses, but
just layer up when you come down south. Julie, I think this is a great spot to wrap it up, because once again we're back to what we were talking about in terms of resilience. We talk about humour. I am so thankful for you coming on to the show. Very appreciative. So thank you very, very much. I look forward to our ventures together, and I am deeply humbled that you chose to share as much of your story with our audience that you did. So thank you so much.
And I would just like, before we wrap up, Kirk, one of the other decisions that I made when I looked at my future was the expansion of Agent Dynamics. And that's my baby, right? That brand is so important to me. We've built that brand up over the last 15 years, and you can only get leverage through two ways, people or systems. And so the past couple of years, we spent a lot of time building the systems within our business and automating. And I was very careful and considerate of who I would invite into partnership in Agent Dynamics. And the criteria, once again, I went back to my criteria of, is this person valued aligned with my values? Am I proud to have this person within my organisation? And do I believe they will do good work? And they come from the highest place of ethical standards and behaviour? Are they already in the industry? Are they already making a difference that by becoming a partner in Agent Dynamics, this will value add to both themselves and to their clients? And do they have the skill level to be able to pursue that stream within the income? And Kirk, you ticked all three boxes. And we only will have a very small number of clients. But I believe so much in what we do and the work that we do. There's only so much that I can do. And to have people like you on the ground that have got the same level of commitment, to have people understand themselves and how they can contribute and how they can make a difference in the world. I'm really proud to have you on board as one of our partners in Agent Dynamics.
Well, thank you. That's a very, very high compliment, and I'm even more humble now. I'm actually a little bit lost for it, but thank you. And people who know me know that's a hard ask to get me to stop talking. But
so of those who know you, Kirk, and who work with you or who want to know more about Agent Dynamics, reach out to Kirk. Don't reach out to me. Reach out to Kirk and ask him, get on a call with you and take you through our framework and our platform and how this can actually totally transform your business.
Thank you. All right. And this is the end of Series 1 and a fitting way to end it. So thank you, Julie. We'll be back with Series...
absolute pleasure.
We'll be back with Series 2 very shortly. Thanks for tuning in. You've been listening to another podcast in the Influential Conversations series. These are brought to you proudly by Tappy, Box Brownie, Inspection Express, and Agent Dynamics. Please be sure to tune in next time for the next in this series.